SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Discover Covington County Hospital's swing bed program, offering comprehensive care for patients transitioning from acute hospital care to home. With a focus on rehabilitation, we ensure a smooth journey back to your home environment. Choose Covington County Hospital, where your health care matters.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday Eve.
All right, what about the Merriam-Webster Word of the Year? Have you seen the reports on this? So, of course, you can bet on anything now, right, in the prediction markets. One of the popular prediction markets platform, Kalshi, K-A-L-S-H-I. Its co-founders, billionaires, by the way, Rhino. I think they met at MIT, if I'm not mistaken. One, I think a Brazilian native female. I've seen her interviewed before. Brilliant she is. I think I got that right. You might want to check me on that, but this has become extremely popular.
Yeah, Tarek Mansour from California.
Yeah.
Born in California, raised in Lebanon.
Okay.
And then he worked at Goldman Sachs and Citadel. And then Luana Lopez Lara, a Brazilian native and former professional ballet dancer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
She went from ballet dancing to computer science at MIT.
That is so awesome. Both billionaires on paper, at least because of their concept and creation. This is another example about when you talk about, well, what will these jobs be in the future? Who would ever thought about this? You don't. And so that's just it. There's certain of us that just have this visionary ability, and they think of stuff like this. And then they create it. They act on it. They get mega wealthy doing it, and a lot of other people do along the way. But back to the story here. The Merriam-Webster Word of the Year for 2026. This, according to the prediction markets, you can bet on this, of course. That's what prediction markets are. You can bet on anything. Top of the list right now, Vibe, V-I-B-E, at 29%. I didn't see this one coming. Number 2, brain rot, 15%. This one, I guess you could predict it, AI, right? And then finally, in fourth place, that's 14% is what the Kalshi market, prediction markets have the odds at of it being the word of the year. And number 4, Lore, L-O-R-E. 4%. So you can bet on this. the top of the list, in the lead in terms of the percentage and the way Kalshi has handicapped it. 29 cents. You can place your bet for yes that Vibe will be the word of the year. No will cost you 79 cents. This is great. I love it. But that's fascinating information there. Vibe. Did you see that coming?
I don't think that's actually going to be the winner.
Okay. What's your odds on?
I would say more than likely AI.
Okay. I'm with you. It's every dang day.
Because I don't think they'll go with back-to-back words with negative connotations. So you're not going to have brain rot because last year's was slop.
That's right. It sure was.
So
brain rot.
Kind of deal brain rot out. Vibe, I don't know, has become as big a part of the lexicon as AI has.
I would agree. I think you're right. And that kind of seems like it was popular in the 80s.
My mental picture of the average Merriam-Webster decision maker could be completely wrong, but I'm just not picturing somebody working at Merriam-Webster with a whole bunch of Gen Z and Gen Alpha running around talking about vibes and that kind of stuff.
Oh, you're probably right. I think you're probably right. So we got a flurry, as the economists sometimes like to say, of economic data today. And what we learned from that, unfortunately, is that this inflation thing is still among us and doesn't seem to be really getting any better. Now, today, the market reaction, the NASDAQ is doing well because there's just lots of optimism about the technology issues, those companies involved in that industry, which, of course, comprises the majority of the listings on the NASDAQ, that particular exchange. But we got the Fed's favorite, as they like to say, their favorite metric of inflation, the personal consumption expenditures. This morning, headline year-over-year inflation up 3.8%. That's an annualized figure. In other words, if you look at the trailing 12 months, effective April 30th, 2026, 3.8%. That's an uptick from the trailing 12 months in March of 3.5%. The headline figure month over month, and by headline, all we mean is everything, 0.4% lower than March's rate of 0.7%, but the core, that's where there's some concern. The core excludes volatile, as they like to say, energy and food. Of course, we all have to have energy and food, but it just sort of measures stuff that's not as subject to pretty wild swings in price. Oil, food, because they are traded commodities in the markets for those goods, they can be more volatile and just react almost violently up or down based on a number of factors and events. But the core, 3.3% higher versus March's 3.2%. Month over month, 0.2% lower than March's rate of 0.3%. So still a problem. And now this presents a really big problem for new Fed Chairman Kevin Warsh. He, of course, now at the helm of the Federal Reserve, sworn in this past Friday. And, you know, he's caught in the old rock and between the old rock and a hard place there because the president is going to continue, I believe, to pressure him to lower interest rates. But he also knows that, well, if we do that, we run the risk of further inflation and aggravating the inflationary environment somehow, in some way, because when interest rates are lower, people tend to go spend more money, mainly businesses, because the access to and cost of capital is less, and that tends to drive up inflation. So that's what's going on, kind of a squeeze, in a bit of a pickle, as they say. And consumers, they're getting a little weary of this inflation, and they're spending less. The personal savings rate declined at 2.6% in April. That's the lowest monthly print for that rate since June 22. That attributed to having to spend more money and not being able to save as much. So we got Wells Fargo, their chief economist, Gary Schlossberg. He said, quote, fresh signs of higher inflation and pressure on households' inflation-adjusted incomes and spending add to the policy dilemma facing the Federal Reserve, just like we were saying. Likely resolved for now by leaving policy interest rates unchanged. I believe that's exactly what's going to happen. We also had fresh attacks over in Iran. The president ordered those, and that it is reported to be in defense again to protect our American soldiers, sailors, troops in the area. I just don't know about the regime or their intent to really reach a peaceful settlement. And the president's got a red line in the sand that says you got to give up your nukes. I'm still thinking that's going to require ground troops and a ground invasion to accomplish that, to literally physically remove them from the country and then ensure that they have zero capability to retool and to produce a nuclear weapon in the future. I think until that happens, we're kind of stuck with this sticky inflation driven largely by the price of oil, which now is up again today after falling somewhat yesterday. We're going to take a break right now. We got Amanda Bratu, Marketing and Development Director, State Games of Mississippi, at 10:35. Joe Spraggins, Brigadier General, retired, of course, from the Air Force with the Department of Marine Resources. This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. So what's happening, by the way, if you're not familiar with why we can't seem to achieve some sort of peace agreement and honor on both sides the ceasefire, is that Iran, the capital city there, they want financial relief. They want essentially reparations for the war. And they say only that will end the attacks. And then you got Republican hawks, if you will. I guess that's the common term we use to describe people that just want to go all out on using our military force to achieve objectives. They're cautioning the president against signing a bad deal, including our own Senator Roger Wicker. You've probably seen that. So these sort of competing pressures have kept this agreement from coming to fruition and being executed. And so the administration is trying to walk that fine line. He's weighing in on an interim deal as the president that would prioritize opening the strait. He understands that that's critical to getting the oil flowing and driving down the price of gas. You know that his folks are telling him that people in the country are not happy with the price of the pump. He pledged as a candidate to make life in America more affordable. And while I certainly understand that that's not the case right now, I think his position would be this is a short-term sacrifice to rid the world of this nuisance in Iran, who's been after us for 47 years. He makes that point explicitly, often. I did hear him yesterday really highlighting the gains in the stock markets. And there's no doubt the markets seem to be shrugging off a fair amount of that. But that's largely driven, again, by the technology industry in the country, which accounts for about half of our GDP growth. By the way, which has been revised, the outlook for GDP growth. And this is a concern as well because the administration has pretty much been forecasting a 4 to 5% GDP growth this year, and that has been revised now down to 1.6%. So we'll be getting another round of GDP data here pretty soon to see how that's going. So 1.6% was the growth for the first quarter, not nearly as strong as initially estimated, and now that is being forecast as the rate of growth for the entire year. So all these factors are kind of the backdrop for a midterm election coming up. And my fear, Rhino, is that if the Democrats, God help us, take control of the House, you know what we'll get? Nonstop impeachment. That's all we'll get. And that will aggravate the president. And he'll direct a lot of his focus onto that. And, of course, the country gets nothing done in the meantime because all they care about is a person. And it does kind of highlight, maybe even validate the old Trump derangement syndrome. But that's what they're going to do. You know, they're sitting around with articles teed up right now, ready to go. And they'll all have to put their mark on it, right? So, no, hold my beer. Here are my articles of impeachment. And that will go nowhere in the Senate. Even if the Democrats, God forbid, take control of the Senate, they won't get the necessary votes. I think it's 2/3 in the Senate to convict, to act on the articles of impeachment that the House can pass and transmit. Gee, what does that procession look like, Rhino? The old articles of impeachment. What would that look like? You're so good at envisioning that.
It looks an awful lot like a New Orleans funeral.
That's right. You told us that before. Oh, my gosh. With the spinning umbrellas and the whole bit, right? I love it.
It's both a somber occasion and a celebration.
Okay, gotcha. And it's going nowhere, of course. But I really do think that's where their focus will be. Day one. Jeez. Meantime, oh, gosh. Oh, Liz Warren, you know, we've been talking a little bit about data centers and AI because that's honestly a subject of much discussion in the country as well as state. Liz Warren never met a tax she didn't like. What does she do? Just dream up taxes all night? Evidently, she wants to tax AI to invest in people, not technology, not understanding. I don't even know where to start with that stupidity. She wants to tax AI. She's just a big redistribution apparatus, is all she is. She's advocating, and she's so serious in her little video recording about it. It's what drives me crazy. She wants to target the AI industry. Quote, it's time to tax AI and invest in people. In other words, let me take money away from the people who are producing value for society and generating financial rewards from that and give it to these people who don't do squat. And did I get that wrong? That's pretty much it. She has floated the prospect of also taxing the energy consumed by data centers. I'm telling you, she dreams up taxes all night. Nothing productive. She said, rethinking our tax code must also include going to the source. That means taxing AI companies directly, which can start with taxing AI data centers. She wrote that in an opinion piece in Time magazine. By imposing a reasonable excise tax on the energy used by data centers, families could recoup some of the gains of AI. Good grief. While America continues to stay competitive in the AI race. A well-designed tax. There are no well-designed taxes. Would focus on the companies that can afford it, which once again is so misguided. Tax policy is not to be designed on the basis of what can be afforded. That's horse hockey. With the bigger the data center, the more they pay. Oh my gosh. Oh, we can't be afraid to consider even bigger and bolder proposals to tax AI too, including ideas that sound radical today. All your ideas are radical, but may quickly become common sense, is what she said. Lady, you've never slept within the block of common sense. That, by the way, an old New Orleanian metaphor my dad used to use. Never slept in the block. Gosh, dog. Right now, companies pay payroll taxes for their workers, but they get tax breaks for investing in technology. Effectively a tax penalty for hiring human beings and a tax break for buying equipment. I kid you not. That's what she says. That's just stupid.
I guess she's missed the articles where companies are having to go on hiring sprees because they thought AI could solve all their problems.
Correct.
And then they wound up spending more on tokens to use the AI than it would have cost to actually keep the people on their payroll.
And in particular, you know, the last couple of months, this idea that, oh my gosh, AI is going to replace all the software developers. We're not going to need software companies. That is grossly overestimated. The rumors of the death of software developers and software companies is grossly exaggerated, it turns out. You know why? Because it takes human creativity. Forget the coding part of it. Start with the concept, the idea, the functionality. That takes human creativity. We need that more than ever to leverage all this underlying technology. But the creating and designing those systems is still and will be a human endeavor for a long time. Creating the underlying code as a starting point, maybe. But if you think you're going to get golden code out of a code generator, you're dreaming. You don't understand software development if you think that. We're coming right back. Stay with us. We're in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook, Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. We welcome Amanda Bratu, Marketing and Development Director for the State Games of Mississippi. Hey, Amanda, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
So tell us about the State Games. Describe that to our audience, exactly what those are and how long they've been held.
So State Games are athletic events for all ages and all abilities, and this is our 35th year. We're based on the Olympic model, and we are recognized by the National Conference of State Games. Okay, so the games that we hold here in Mississippi, they're similar events across the country in other states? In other states, yes. Okay. There are, I think, about 27 other states that have state games in their states, just like we do. And some of them hold winter games, we don't have any winter sports here, but so ours are all in the summer.
And when will they be coming up here in Mississippi? The 35th annual state games on the horizon. When does that occur?
35th annual.
Yeah.
That's right. So our opening ceremonies is next Friday, June the 5th. We have already started games in May, but our opening ceremonies will be June the 5th in Meridian, Mississippi, downtown at our city hall. So
is it the same location every year in Meridian where they're held?
So no, our opening ceremonies is always in Meridian. Our home offices are in Meridian.
Okay.
Yes. But we hold games all across the state.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I see. So what I'm looking at your website, the history indicates 1,200 athletes competing in 12 sports.
That was the very first year.
Okay.
Yes.
Back in 1992.
Yes, that was the very first year. So we last year we had about 40 sports, and we had right at 5,000 athletes.
Wow, 5,000, and all are required to be residents of Mississippi. All the participants?
They are not. No, we don't require them to all be residents of Mississippi. We have people that come up from Florida and over from Alabama and from Louisiana to do some of our sports.
Okay.
Yes.
40 different sports. Give us a feel for what some of those sports are exactly.
Okay. I have a list here.
Oh, wow.
You can see
awesome.
this or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just mention a few of them there.
This weekend coming up. Okay, so I'm going to just tell you this weekend coming up in the Ridgeland area is Ultimate Flying Disc. In Pearl and Brandon, we have Grand Slam Baseball, which is going to bring in about 80 teams of kids to play baseball in your area.
Wow.
Right.
That is awesome. So these events that are across the state, do they continue to progress to some sort of state championship that's held somewhere?
The National State Games does hold national events every 2 years, and this is that year. Okay. So if you medal and they offer your sport, you can go on to the National State Games. Yes.
Wow.
And we have that information on our website as well.
And from a funding perspective, Amanda, you have some private contributors and donors?
We are completely nonprofit.
Okay.
So all of our funding comes from mostly the Meridian area. We do have some funding from the city of Pearl, and Visit Vicksburg, Mississippi has funded us.
Well, that's awesome.
We reach out to them and get grants, and Explore Ridgeland. We get grants from them. Yes.
Yeah. And you may have mentioned, but what are the age ranges of the participants?
So we start very young with soccer. And, whenever they start playing soccer, if they can get into that tournament, they can go. And then we have very senior adults who participate in some of our events, our swimming events and our bowling events. Some of those are very senior adults.
Oh, that's cool. That's pretty neat. Okay, so... And I'm just looking at the individual sports. I'm on your website now. That's just fascinating. Pickleball is among them as well. I know that's become very popular in the last few years.
Yes. And so this year that's going to be down on the coast at the Pickler. And we are hoping to have a really good turnout for that.
So if someone wants to register for the games, how do they do that, Amanda?
They right there on that website, stategamesofms.org, or they can call our office and we can help them get registered, 601-482-0205.
Okay. And so what else do you want to tell us about the games? I mean, so this is all coming up, always held this time of year, right?
Yes, always held this time of year. Opening ceremonies is always the first Friday of June. And we just want you to be involved wherever you are. If you have a sport that you are excited about, we want you to be involved. Yeah.
And there is, looks like coming up in October, a pumpkin run, 5K, and a mini pumpkin run for 1 mile. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So Excuse me. Just a minute. I'm sorry.
You're good.
So the pumpkin run, we encourage our participants to dress up. It's usually right around Halloween, so we encourage them to dress up in their costumes. And then the mini pumpkin run is the 1 mile, and that's for children 12 and under, and for them to dress up, and we give awards for costumes. And it's a lot of fun.
Mini pumpkin run. I love that. That's pretty cool. Of course, held around Halloween. Pretty neat. No doubt about it. Yes, sir. How big is your staff, Amanda, that are associated or employed by state games?
So we have 5 people on staff. An executive director, our sports director, who lifts the majority of our load. We have an administrative director. We have myself. And we have our expert consultant, Carolyn Smith. She's been with us the entire 35 years. She was actually in the planning process for state games.
Okay.
And then during the summer, we bring in a lead intern. We have a grant from our local Raleigh Foundation that we are able to pay our lead intern with. And then we have usually 3 or 4 other interns that we bring on to do the heavy lifting. Those are usually boys that we get from local high schools to come and help us do all of the grunt work.
Super awesome. And then you have an Athletes of the Year recognition as well, right?
Yes. We do. So we ask for nominations from all of our sports commissioners and then from other people in the area to nominate an athlete in each sport. And then from those nominations, we have a small committee that chooses a male athlete of the year, a female athlete of the year, and a youth athlete of the year.
Yeah.
Then we have a banquet for that.
That's awesome. I'm looking at a photo from this past year in February at the state capitol, the Athletes of the Year.
That's right. In
a photo posing along with my friends, Representatives Billy Adam Calvert and also Troy Smith, T-Roy as we call him. So he's in that photo as well.
There,
they represent the area over in Lauderdale County.
They do, absolutely.
Yeah, Clark County, yeah. So
Lauderdale and Clark County, yes, absolutely.
That is awesome. I love seeing that. And then you've got Ochsner's, which, of course, is a big healthcare provider that has a hospital there they operate in Meridian. They're heavily involved in this. They're one of your big sponsors.
Yes. Ochsner Rush is one of our big sponsors, and they also provide all of our sports medicine at each of the events.
Okay.
We have a sports medicine person on site at every event in case they are needed for anything.
Gotcha. What it looks like, I knew some folks that participated in this when my kids were growing up that had a blast and did real well and really enjoyed it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's top notch. It's first class, super professional, and so we certainly appreciate your organization for that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And we, of course, appreciate...
We love what we do. We would not be here. Yeah, we wouldn't be here without the support of our community and for people who keep saying, we love it. We want to do it again.
Fantastic. Keep it going and appreciate you joining us this morning. Amanda Bratu, State Games of Mississippi. Appreciate it, Amanda. Thanks.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you.
Coming right back in the Element Well studio. Stay with us.
This program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge. Huge news.
Huge news.
You need to listen to this. Middays with Gerard, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio on the C Spire text line. This is Travis and Pearl. I have participated in these games and represented Mississippi at the National Games in Pittsburgh in 2023. I played golf and had a great time. We were treated to a Pirates game where all the states were paraded around the warning track prior to the game, and he sent us a photo, great photo, and that's him holding the sign there, the state of Mississippi, representing the state of Mississippi in the state games with some other Mississippi participants in the background, and also the Mississippi state flag held up. Really good. Appreciate you sending that, Travis, and thanks for representing the great state of Mississippi, and congratulations. That's pretty cool. Enjoyed that. So, good morning. This is Nathan in Smith County. As a third-generation small-acre farmer, 95 acres, I was dead set on voting for Andy Gibson. But I'm not sure I agree with his strong stance against data centers. I'm rethinking that decision, and I know it's still a while away, but I don't want Mississippi to fall behind. We have come so far the past few years. I've got some more research to do. Appreciate you sending that in, Nathan. And I would just encourage people to acknowledge that we got to have both. This is a false choice. It's not a choice of we can either have data centers or eat. That's a false choice. That is not true, not even remotely close. And again, I point out, if we wanted to see a halt to development of data centers and build out of the technology industry, which right now is largely being fueled by this artificial intelligence explosion, because keep this in mind, we have about 4,000 data center separate buildings in the country across about 1,600 sites. 80% of that capacity is dedicated to non-AI. Now, a lot of people equate, this data centers with AI. Not true. It's data centers are hardened facilities, purpose-built buildings with environments inside them that, again, are designed to host IT equipment and software and all the infrastructure associated with delivering all this information we have at our fingertips. And these phones, I'm holding mine up right now, think of that as a remote control of data centers. That's what they are. Because every tap you put on there, every app you have, every activity, every action, all flowing through some data center somewhere. I always thought when I built the first data center, commercial data center in the state of Mississippi, that was 2000, by the way, delivering cloud services before the term was invented. I always felt like we have to get this to a point where we end users are totally abstracted and removed from having to even think about how to get to this massive volume of information and use all these tools. It just has to be intuitive. You don't have to think about it. And what's happened, Rhino, is we did pretty good. My industry did pretty good at that because the vast majority of people that oppose data centers don't even know what they do. They've never been in one, couldn't tell you what the infrastructure is or conceptually about their architecture and how stuff gets from your phone and your computer and your pad back and forth to where all that stuff comes from, which is in data centers. And that's fine. They shouldn't have to. And that was the goal of the industry, is to make it, because we knew that if we make this hard, nobody's going to use it. It's got to be intuitive, like the old saying, falling off a log, right? Nothing to it. We did so good, nobody knows what goes on. Those are just nondescript buildings with no windows on them. And you can't go in them because that would breach the security protocol. You don't want people in them, as a matter of fact. So, except those who have the credentials to be inside those facilities.
Maybe people are stuck with their first idea when it comes to data centers? Because I remember, gosh, was it Google that had the big data center they were building on a barge out off the coast of California?
Yeah.
And it seems like the reporting at the time on that data center convinced a lot of people that data centers are just this big repository for hard drives full of information about you.
I don't know where that came from. You see them referred to as surveillance centers. What are they talking about? Where did that come from?
I think that's where it comes from. I think it was that initial reporting when there weren't enough people in the conversation that actually knew what they were talking about. And it just became this boogeyman of misunderstanding.
I don't even know what that means. And I was in the data center business, and I don't know what that means. Never heard of that before. Now, is it true that you can buy for a very low cost some pretty sophisticated video surveillance and security systems for your house, for your apartment, right? Guess what? I'll use cloud. I'll use data centers. But that's a good thing because that protects your property and your life. Fox News, SuperTalk News, Joe Spraggins, he runs the Department of Marine Resources next.
Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays on this
Friday Eve.
We are, of course, in the Element Well studio. We welcome Joe Spraggins, Brigadier General, retired from the United States Air Force. Okay, we'll get him back on. We lost him right there. Had a little technical difficulty, and Rhino will work on that. So the president just announced, says no one will control the Strait of Hormuz. Not exactly sure what that means, but crude oil is reacting to that. It's up somewhat, not just a whole bunch, $1.29, something like that. We'll see where that goes, but that's just hot off the press from the president. I give it to him, man. He's working overtime, gathering up with all his cabinet, his advisors, to try to get some resolution to this situation. He knows it's not sustainable, not in the best interest of our country or the world to just drag this thing out. And so I certainly respect him for that and hope we come up with something pretty soon because it certainly is having an effect on the cost of living here in the United States, and that will have political ramifications. Man, the last thing I think we need in this country right now is for the Democrats to seize control of the House and, God forbid, the Senate, which would just put the president's agenda on ice. That's why he is really pressuring the Congress to get a reconciliation bill to him and get the SAVE Act to him, which requires 60 votes in the Senate. But they're working to see if it's possible to incorporate the SAVE Act. Of course, that would be the voting security, election integrity bill that would require the states to ensure that only legal citizens are registered to vote and can cast a vote. Now, some states have already acted in that direction, such as the state of Mississippi. So the SAVE Act, if it passes at the federal level, wouldn't mean a lot here because we just passed the SHIELD Act, authored by Senator Jeremy England, that essentially accomplishes what the SAVE Act would do. Alabama, another state that's implemented such a measure. It's the big blue states that seem to allow everybody to sign up there or the problem would be affected. We got the executive director of the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, Joe Spraggins, Brigadier General, retired from the United States Air Force. Hey, Joe, thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you. Glad to be here.
Yes, sir. Give us an update from the Department of Marine Resources. We had Commissioner Andy Gibson on the program yesterday talking about how significant our imports are of seafood into this country, but we got great seafood producers right here in the state of Mississippi.
We do, and we have some of the best seafood in the world that comes right out of the Gulf of America, and we're trying to get people to understand that, to be able to understand how important it is to buy the domestic seafood and not buy the import, because two things. Number one, the import, you don't know any idea of what happened, how it was grown, what kind of conditions was it grown in, anything about it. And it could be grown in a septic tank. You don't know what it was grown in. And I'm serious about that. It really actually happens in places like in other countries. So sewer plants are a big thing. They grow a lot of shrimp and stuff in sewer plants in foreign countries. And so what we need to do is we need to make it people to understand, and we're doing a big campaign to be able to get people to understand how important it is to buy local and also buy domestic seafood.
Okay. Gotcha. So it seems like that people are paying attention to this more, aren't they? Mr. Executive Director, they're paying attention to this more. We passed law, was it in the 25 session, right, that kind of requires fair labeling and fair description of seafood that we consume to know whether or not it's imported or domestic, right?
This is true, and we refined that law in 2026. They just passed a new one and refined it a little bit more, basically saying that if you have a restaurant, that you would be able to you don't have to put either domestic or import. You can put the country of origin on it if it's an import. That was one thing that we changed. And then the other thing was that if you had a menu, it costs a lot of money to update menus on a regular basis, so what we asked them to do is be able to label it and put something on the front of the menu or either on a page where the product is being sold as to what is domestic and what is import.
Okay. Well, that certainly makes sense. I've seen reports, General, that some of our seafood producers, not just in Mississippi, but overall in the country, are really concerned about and being challenged with the high price of fuel and that they're sort of curtailing their harvesting. Is that true?
Well, the price of fuel always directs things as what happens. And, when you're paying $5 a gallon for diesel fuel, you have to be able to make sure that you can sell your shrimp and, or your product for something that will give you a profit. And, we are seeing a declining in the industry everywhere. The decline when you get, we were, just to give you an idea, in 2004, 2005 time frame, we would have somewhere in the neighborhood of 800 shrimp boats go out on the first day. This year we had 22.
Wow. Okay.
Last year we had 30-something. This year the 22 was due to weather. A lot of it was due to weather and what was happening. But we're still seeing a big decline in the shrimp industry. And the reason is two things. It's a twofold thing. Number one is the cost of what it costs to be able to do it and the profit that they can make, because the imports coming in are so cheap that it's hard to get anything for the domestic shrimp, especially when you go into a processor. Now, the ones that are selling them on the dock here, they're doing fair. We had just to give you an idea, the small shrimp was selling for about $2 a pound this week, and then the larger shrimp was selling for about $6 a pound, and that's on the dock, and that's fine. They can make a living doing that. The problem is you can't make a living when you take a big boat and go out and stay for 3 days and come back, and you're getting $1 a pound for your shrimp, and you're paying $5, plus for diesel fuel, plus you got to pay for the wear and tear on the boat, plus you got to pay for the operation of the boat, it's just almost impossible to make a living doing it.
Yeah.
So we're trying hard to get people to understand. We're working with the industry to be able to get people to ask for it. And one of the things that we're putting together with Rochelle hit the Visit Mississippi.
Yeah.
And with our Gulf Coast, we also have our Gulf Coast Tourism working on a campaign for us. And we're going to be able to go out and basically put a label on it about selling about American and also more than so Mississippi Gulf Fresh seafood. And if it's Mississippi Gulf Fresh, and when I say that, it came out of the Gulf of America, and it's Mississippi Gulf Fresh, we're going to be able to give you a symbol to put out there and put on your doors and put on your menus and put other things that's saying that this is what it is. And we in turn will help you in some form of way, maybe with advertising or something else, to be able to offset some of the cost. This may drive the price up of what, it costs more to buy domestic. So it'll drive the price up a little bit and help a little bit as far as the fishermen themselves. And then in turn, we'll help the restaurants and the others be able to offset that price by giving them some form of advertisement or other things to be able to offset the cost.
Gotcha. General, are there any state or federal regulations that are particularly problematic for the seafood industry that you'd like to see there be some adjustments or reforms to?
Well, the USDA is the one who handles mainly the import of that coming in. And, obviously they have to work on what their rules are. The problem is that we don't check enough of them. I mean, there's just a small amount that they can check at a port. And, take the port of Gulfport, which is not the largest port in America by any means, but there's a lot of shrimp that come into that port. And they can only check a small amount of that shrimp. So for them, I wish we could have some kind of rules that would say, how was this grown? And you got to show proof of it.
Yeah. Interesting.
And that way we would at least know we're getting decent food and not something that's thrown in a trash hole.
Makes total sense. General, really appreciate you joining us. We got retired Brigadier General Joe Spraggins from the United States Air Force. He serves as the Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. Thank you for your service, sir, and thanks for joining us today.
Oh, very glad to do it. And everything's going good, and even snapper season is going.
That's awesome. Appreciate that report, General. Thanks a lot, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
You were the first thing that I thought of when I thought I drank you off my mind. When I get lost in the liquor, you're the only one I find. If I did the things I ought to, still would not be mine.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Are you thinking about retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. On today's episode of In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, you'll hear an interview with longtime TV actor Richard Burgi, who has appeared on hit shows such as Desperate Housewives, 24, Seinfeld, and many others. You can listen to In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar today at 1 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Also, I just got a notification, Rhino, the Mississippi State Bulldog softball team is battling Texas Tech, I believe, right, in the World Series. I think that just kicked off while we've been on the air here. So we are...
Yeah, first pitch was at 11.
Okay. We're pulling for the Bulldogs to take out the Texas Tech Red Raiders, or at least defeat them today in that action. So pretty cool, them being in the College World Series. It's pretty neat. And, of course, we got regionals coming up this weekend. We got the Starkville Regional, the Hattiesburg Regional, and Ole Miss is going up to Nebraska. Going to be playing up in Lincoln, Nebraska. So maybe they can win the Super Regionals and get back to Nebraska, to a different town. Later on, that, of course, for the College World Series in Omaha, Nebraska. Lincoln, the city where the University of Nebraska is located. So, on the C Spire text line, Brandon from Boonville. My mother's family lived on the coast. When I was a kid, we always went and bought straight off the dock. I'll always support Gulf shrimp over the imported junk. I don't think I'm alone either. I don't mind to pay more for the best shrimp in the world. I'm with you, Brandon. I totally agree. Of course, I'm married to a Biloxi girl, and when I would be down there, even when we were dating, her father knew all the shrimpers and would catch them on their way in and get that fresh catch just like you're talking about, man, and come back and cook it in the various ways. Shrimp's something you can do a lot of different stuff with, of course, and I'm certainly no expert on cooking, but I can eat, and I love that food back then. I agree with you, Brandon. Big difference. Mo says, I'm not a fan of tariffs, but it sounds like we need some apply to overseas seafood. So I will say this, Mose. I'm not a fan of tariffs either in general, but here's the problem, and where tariffs can be of value and I think somewhat justified. And that's when you're competing with the likes of China, whose government gets involved in industry. And they don't care if they lose money to win market share. It's just government. It's not a private for-profit company, but they're competing against American private for-profit companies. And so the playing field's not level. We just want them to quit manipulating markets and their currency.
Well, that's not the only thing involving seafood we want them to quit, because they have the fleets of fishing vessels that travel far from their territorial waters to fish just off the international line, just off the waters of other nations. Essentially, they've already stripped the oceans around China, so they're trying to strip the rest of the world's oceans.
Absolutely. And so because they don't care. It's all about
and whatever. The fleets of fishing vessels are so large they can be seen from space.
That's true. And so, by the way, with respect to this race in data centers and AI and quantum computing, they don't care, honestly. And that's what we're up against. In this country, we don't put machines above people. And we value our land and our precious water resources and other assets that God has bestowed upon our country. China really doesn't care, honestly. People are not valued, nor are they in Iran with a cult regime in control. At one time, they were a capitalistic society like ours. You look at any video or images of Tehran in the 70s, you think you're looking at an American city. No, little to no difference. But when you get the radical cult regime involved, which are honestly somewhat primitive, well, they turn the clock backwards. And that has harmed everyone who lives in the country. All for selfish gain by a handful of people at the expense of tens of millions. Really a bad deal. Ricky in Aberdeen says, Bubba knows all the ways to prepare shrimp. That's a good one, Ricky, from, of course, Forrest Gump. What a classic scene that was. So good. You can't deny Tom Hanks perfectly played, and so was all the other actors. Gary Sinise kind of came onto the scene in his role, and now, of course, is a huge supporter of the United States military. The Lieutenant Dan, of course, his character, and then, of course, his friend that was going back into shrimp business. Oh, so great. So many great lines. And, of course, great music, too, right, as part of that. Just a fantastic movie.
If I'm not mistaken, the young man that played young Forrest is from Mississippi.
I think you're right about that. In the Run, Forrest, Run scene, right?
Yeah, because originally Tom Hanks was not going to have a discernible accent, but the actor playing young Forrest couldn't really do anything other than his natural Mississippi accent.
Yeah.
So it was Tom Hanks mimicking young Forrest's real accent that became the Forrest Gump accent.
I didn't know that. One of my favorite scenes, of course, is when he's sitting on the park bench and he talks about investing in a little fruit company. We don't have to worry about money anymore. We did pretty good on that. That's pretty good. Man, oh, man. Let's see. The young Forrest was from Corinth, says Louis from the 662. Tate County is what Wayne and Batesville said, so I'm not sure. Which is it? Both in North Mississippi, of course. Dave from Ripley.
According to the Internet Movie Database, he was born in Independence, Mississippi.
Okay. What's that county? I can't remember. That's in North Mississippi. In that is that Tate County?
It's Tate County.
Yeah, okay. All right. Interesting. On the C Spire text line, Dave from Ripley just sent the screenshot. Evidently is connected to the game between Mississippi State and Texas Tech. That happening right now in the Women's College World Series, the double elimination round. Later on today, it's Texas and Tennessee, it looks like. Interesting. Tim from Tupelo says, friend of mine is all anti-data center. The other day he said, these data centers just let the government get your data. I said, have you filed a tax return lately? He said, yeah, for the past 20 years. I said, the government literally already has all your data, dummy. That shut him up real quick. Well, Rhino, not to be confused with the commercial data centers. So the government operates some data centers as well, and they do contract with certain commercial data centers as well, operators, hyperscalers, for certain IT workloads. That's absolutely true. You know who the biggest is? The Pentagon. It's a $9 billion contract. $9 billion. The war in Iran, the war in Venezuela, or the entry, the invasion, and removal from power of Maduro in Venezuela, which lasted just a few hours, totally orchestrated by data centers. I think the average person probably doesn't know that. All using Palantir and other AI-powered tools. Drones rely on data centers. This is why we're so far ahead of the rest of the world, why Iran is no match, that the president boasts about. And he should, over and over and over again. And don't forget also that something I thought about after the show yesterday, opposition to data centers is actually not in your best financial interest, and here's why. You as a taxpayer have made substantial investments, $2 billion, in 10 quantum computing companies, all of which rely on data centers. You have an investment in it. That's a decision the Trump administration made. IBM was a recipient of a fair amount of that because they're way ahead of the game. Them and Google, they kind of lead in the quantum computing industry. Also, Global Foundries received an investment from the federal government, $375 million. There are a number of others as well. D-Wave, another company, all involved in the development of quantum computing. We as taxpayers have a vested interest in this. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Aruba, Jamaica, ooh, I wanna take you. Bermuda, Bahama, come on, pretty mama. Key Largo, Montego, baby, why don't we go? Jamaica, off the Florida Keys.
Dave from Monticello says, thank you for clarifying that about data centers. If I knew that, I had forgot it. I appreciate you clearing it up. I appreciate you saying that, Dave. Not exactly sure what I was talking about. I'm looking at the time right before we went to break.
That came in right about the same time you were talking about the usage for data centers, and it's 20% AI, 80% everything else.
Okay, that's absolutely true. Now, might that change in the future? Possibly, mainly because AI is more resource intensive in its use. But the original data centers, by the way, in this country, housed mainframes. We didn't call them data centers. We called them computer rooms. Literally. I remember that. Big corporation. Where's a computer room? You had a mainframe in your building somewhere and terminals hanging off of it. And you had limited functionality, not like what we're accustomed to today.
And depending on the size of the company, anywhere from one to a full team of people to take care of it.
An army of people, I'm telling you. And you had to be there 7/24 because you had to submit jobs. It wasn't instant information like we're accustomed to today, what we call online. Literally, it was batch processing. You had limited online. I give you an example, a bank. You walk into a bank. Not like it is today. You got all your bank information in the palm of your hand because of data centers. And you can do all your banking in the palm of your hand. In the old days, you wanted to know your account balance, you'd have to go to the teller, to a branch. You could try to call, but that probably...
You could call the number and get the automated system, and it would be wrong.
Right. And that I'm talking about before there was integrated voice. It was called IVR, integrated voice. No automated system. You had to wait for somebody.
I got in trouble in college with that. I was at the bar, called the number on the back of the card. It said I had a certain amount of money, so I spent less than that amount of money. But what I spent was more than what I actually had, and that was a headache.
Think about how all these online systems, just in that simple transaction, have changed that. When's the last time you saw a bounced check? Right? Doesn't happen. You're either cash or you're using
Unless somebody steals your info.
Right. Well, that's true. But, I mean, in general, that used to... But the old days, if you presented your credit card, they'd have to call the credit card company. Yeah. And you'd stand there and hold the whole thing up. Then they'd do it on a
slider thing,
right,
carbon paper.
With the carbon paper. And then you had people who worked for the merchants that would engage in stealing your carbon copies. And then they went through, many companies implemented a policy. You remember that? They show you tearing up the carbons before you left. So you'd know they weren't going to steal your information. Just to illustrate how technology and all this online real-time technology. But in the old days, you go to a teller and say, hey, what's my balance? And they would have one mainframe terminal on the workspace behind them. That 3270 terminal, by the way, is what they call them. And all the tellers would use that one terminal, you'd write down your info. You have to write that down. They'd take that, and they'd type it in, and then they'd write down, here's your balance. I remember that. Well, now think about it. It's instant. All your transactions at the bank, your teller processes those instantly. In the old days, all the paper associated, the deposit slips, the checks, those all got trucked by Wells Fargo to an operations center inside which there would be an army of clerks with what are called proof machines. And checks would flow through in front of their face. It was an automated machine, and they'd see the check, which had the magnetic ink at the bottom for the routing number and the account number. But what it didn't have on it to know how much to deduct from your account was the amount of the check. And so what the proofers did was type that in as the check flowed through in front of them in magnetic ink. That's why when you get your statements and you see the checks in them, you'd see an amount right next to your routing number and your account number at the bottom with the MICR code. You'd see the amount of the check. That's how it used to work. An army of people overnight doing that. No more. That was back in those. So original data centers, if you will, that's what they consisted of. Mainframes, and I'm just using the banking industry as an example, but a room was full of these proof machines that cost a fortune, and people running them all night connected to the mainframe. And then you had what are called controllers out in the branch offices that connected to a corporation's mainframe, and those controllers had terminals plugged into them. Think of a controller kind of like equivalent to a modern-day router, except you weren't connecting to IP-based data transmission. You were connected, it's a whole other story, to what's called SDLC and SNA and all that kind of junk. But nonetheless, and then it was telecom operators. In other words, the phone company, that's who had data centers. They had rooms full of switches that switched all of our voice traffic. And they had computers behind the scenes, all Unix-based computers. Unix, the operating system, invented by Bell Laboratories. Lots of other compute stuff as well, as you know, Rhino, invented by Bell Laboratories, the Bell Telephone Company. Unix just happened to be an extremely efficient operating system for that sort of traffic. And then the first thing we could do on the internet was host a website. And all you could do is look at it. The early websites were just information. And remember, it was common in website design to have what's new, what's cool. Remember that? That's pretty much it. Cryptic. We didn't have all the graphics tools we have today. Surf's up. Remember that? Go surf the internet. Well, all that stuff was hosted in the early days by the telecom carriers because they're the guys that operate the network. And the internet's nothing but a collection of networks. And who operated the networks? The phone companies. Now that's, of course, way expanded since then. They're not all operated and owned by the phone companies. But in those days, they were the telecommunication carriers. They're the only people that had wires all over the place. That's why. They had been doing that a long time. And when we figured out a way to push data across that copper on those wires that are hanging on those poles and run to the ground, that's what led to the build-out of the Internet. And, of course, it was Cisco's invention. The two scientists at Stanford that started Cisco Systems invented the Internet Working Operating System in the 70s that made this whole idea of routing possible, which is still an architecture used today to power the Internet. So I'm sorry. I know I'm kind of digressing a bit and reminiscing a bit. I just wanted you to have some understanding of how we got to where we are today. So we've advanced from the early days where you needed data centers as a place to put all that equipment and all that software and, most importantly, all the connectivity, the bandwidth, fiber, copper, into a building or buildings to host websites. That's where it started. And then the idea came up that, you know what, we could do more than just host websites with this stuff now. And we came up with, it was really Sun who invented, I don't know if you remember this, Rhino, it is a software tool called Java. And all Java said is, look, you can develop your software.
Good old applets.
Exactly. Exactly. And in the early days, hosting websites, Sun servers. They invented the web server. Now you could buy one off the shelf and put it on your PC at home. In the old days, you couldn't. You had to have big, giant Sun servers. Sun, by the way, a little trivia, stands for Stanford University Network. That's where it was invented. Scott McNeely, longtime CEO of Sun, sold to Oracle, owned by Larry Ellison. Not one of the favorite people by Liz Warren. She always likes to attack Larry Ellison. What's he, number 2, 3, richest guy in the country, 4, something like that? He founded Oracle. But that's where all that stuff came from. Just a little history. I lived this, man. This was my life for years. And
he's fourth.
Fourth, okay.
You got Elon at $700+ billion, Larry Page at $300+ billion, Sergey Brin at $300+ billion, and Larry Ellison at between $192 and $276 billion.
Surpassed Bezos, though, right?
Oh, yeah. Zuckerberg passed Bezos.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Bezos is at 6th.
Sergey, of course, Microsoft.
Google.
Pardon me. I confused
Palmer's
those.
Microsoft.
That's right. I'm sorry. I confused those two guys.
He's number 7.
Number 7.
And Jensen Huang's number 8, Michael Dell's number 9, and Warren Buffett's number 10.
Okay. Interesting. So, and they get attacked a lot. But I would encourage anybody to go look at the philanthropy of those people. It's incredible how much money they give away. It's impressive, honestly. God bless them for it. I mean, Michael Dell, you've seen, he stepped up several months ago when the president announced the Trump accounts, remember? Right off the bat, he dumped a bunch of money in that.
To expand it.
Exactly right. To expand it. Exactly right. But yet we got the likes of Liz Warren that attack them just simply because they succeeded. By the way, never graduated from college, Michael Dell. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Up a Mississippi. Check it out. Let's do this. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Dave from Monticello says, I thought Al Gore invented the internet. He did state some claim to that effect, didn't he, Rhino?
Yeah, that was, Bush Gore?
Yeah.
Or was that even earlier?
I think it may have been.
It all runs together at this point.
I think it was a little earlier when he was, of course, the vice president. Of course, he was running when he was the vice president. But, man, oh, man. What an idiot.
It was 99, so, yeah, that would have been Bush Gore. And it was during a CNN interview where he awkwardly stated, quote, during my service in the United States Congress, I took the initiative in creating the internet.
I just can't believe he said that. Does he truly believe that? I guess he did at the time, huh? Because, that's just ludicrous.
He authored and sponsored critical legislation to fund and expand public access to the network, such as the Supercomputer Network Study Act of 1986, which was introduced to study the feasibility of high-speed computer networks. Spend money to check the feasibility of something that was already in process. Typical government waste. And in 91, the High Performance Computing Act, widely known as the Gore Bill. Legislation directed over $1 billion towards developing the national information infrastructure, connecting universities and supercomputers. Well,
it is true that the origins of the internet date back to the late 60s.
And academia.
And the military.
Yeah.
Don't forget the military. Academia, that's right. Developing the technology. The military utilizing it. ARPANET.
That happens a lot.
That's right. Is what it was called.
In the useful side of academia.
That's true.
The government doesn't show up in the humanities and ask anything.
That's true.
But they love engineering departments.
And I can't remember what ARPA stands for. It's an acronym for ARPA. Advanced, I think R is research. I don't remember what the other words are. But the actual
ARPA or DARPA?
ARPA.
Was that before DARPA?
I think that was before. That preceded DARPA, right? Which is
Advanced Research Projects Agency.
Okay.
Which is now the Defense Advanced
That's
Research
right.
Projects
The word
Agency.
defense was added to it. So originally the idea was to create a communication system that could survive. Got to remember the time period, the 60s, nuclear attack on American soil. That literally, the interstates, have a military bent to them as well. You're aware of that. They were designed with the 4 lanes and the shoulders and stuff so that you can.
And ever so often you got a straight shot for at least. It's not a mile, but it's some ridiculous length.
There is a rule about that. You're right. Can't have too many curves in them. All you got to do is, say, in Mississippi, drive 55 and then drive 49. You don't have sharp turns on 55 the way you do 49. You got a U.S. highway, interstate highway. Same thing on 20, which is pretty straight all the way through. 10 is pretty straight.
Because it was built in the time period where the military power was in nuclear bombers.
Correct.
So you needed places for them to take off and land. It's just odd that we still utilize the interstate so much when the impetus for it went the way of the dodo like 5 years later.
That is true.
Because bombers quickly became obsolete in the nuclear arms race.
And there was also some goal of having the ability to transport tanks and other military assets was part of. But it had a military bent to it from the Eisenhower era, 50s, after World War II. Still thinking about getting attacked here, right? Same thing with the communication system. The idea, and it was the TCP/IP, that is the protocol that is used in moving data through a network that was core to ARPANET and then now DARPANET. It was just designed to allow the military to continue to communicate electronically in the event of a nuclear attack. Essentially, it decentralized it. So if you think about what the Internet is, it's a decentralized network. Instead of, well, there's our network, all the network gear is in the closet in a rack in there. Think of it this way. The Internet can't be described as it's in one room. It is the interconnectivity of gazillions of network infrastructure technology stored in buildings across the world. And in the late 90s, when the Internet was really building out, which was being done by the telecom carriers, Mississippi has some history there with Bernie Ebbers' LDDS, that huge player in that world. All the Bell companies were all building out as well. Sprint, there were others involved, and they're still big operators of the Internet. But something kind of neat that I have a little bit of a connection to, I wanted to share, is connection to the European continent, right? To have a World Wide Web, you got to have some way to connect between the continents. And all we had back then were limited copper connectivity and a little bit of satellite connectivity for voice communications. But there's a company called Global Crossing. They installed fiber on the ocean floor, the Atlantic Ocean floor, to connect the continents. That was in the 90s. My financial sponsor on Wall Street, when I was raising money to grow my company, he put a big fund together in his prior career for Global Crossing. He used to brag about it. He took $30 million and turned it into $3 billion for him and his clients, of course. Coming right back after Fox News, SuperTalk News.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday Eve.
Just a reminder, the C-Spire text line, 601-879-4395. By the way, C-Spire, of course, Rhino, a data center operator as well. I think they have multiple facilities, one in Starkville, as a matter of fact. So on the C-Spire text line, law enforcement used to have to go to the courthouse and manually flip through index cards to get tag information. Absolutely true. And, of course, didn't have onboard ruggedized laptops in every cruiser that has access to everything that they need to do their job, right? So, yeah, I mean...
It's also got solitaire on it.
Of course. But they don't play it when they're on the job, of course. Don't tell on them, Rhino. Oh, my gosh. Your father, right? Law enforcement officer. So, and we appreciate his service as we do all of our first
Long
responders.
Before the laptops and cars era.
I understood. You know, my company brought that, by the way, to Mississippi. And the most complicated part about it was the mounting. The laptop, so it was Panasonic that made ruggedized laptops. I'm going back to the early 2000s when we started outfitting state trooper vehicles, started with, and then numerous LEOs across the state. But it was we had a third-party company that we partnered with, and they had the mounting expertise. Because those laptops that Panasonic made, they were $9,000 a piece. And the reason is because that Panasonic was the provider is because they did it for the United States military. In those laptops, you're familiar with this term. I don't know that many in our audience are. Those laptops were designed in accordance with what's called mil specs, military specifications. And the specification, by the way, for the laptop, got to remember when we went over to the Middle East and had the various wars and stuff, when we were starting to use laptops in the field with satellite communications, data centers as well, of course, they had to be built such that an M1 tank running over it would not harm it. And they literally, Panasonic had a video they sent us dealers, had a handful of dealers across the country, where they showed, hey, look, they threw an M1 down on the ground, the laptop down on the ground, here comes the M1, it goes over, and they pick it up off the ground after, flip the screen up, hit the button, it's still working. And those were installed, and still today, in law enforcement vehicles, so they meet the military specifications, and that's what the military specify.
Mil-spec is one of those terms that has a bit of a different meaning depending on the generation.
Okay.
Like the greatest generation that fought in World War II, the baby boomer generation that fought in Vietnam, and later generations up to about the global war on terror, mil-spec was like the end-all, be-all. Mil-spec is mil-spec, man. If it's mil-spec, it's the best.
That's right.
Then the global war on terror happens, and soldiers spend 20 years in the sandbox, and mil-spec kind of became a dirty word for younger generations.
I didn't know that.
Because mil-spec to them meant, it met the specifications to get made just barely.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think that's the case, though. Do you? Do you believe that? Did we dilute the standards?
It's one where it's more nuanced. It depends on what you're talking about.
I would agree. But
like the mil-spec for a ruggedized laptop is probably a pretty high standard.
Sure.
Whereas the mil-spec for a jacket to keep you warm might not be as high a standard as what you could get off a consumer rack to keep you warm.
That's probably true. I'd buy that. You're right. It's nuanced. So, I don't know. To me, if you could stick a laptop under an M1 and it could survive being run over, I'd say that's pretty good standard right there. You're not going to buy one of those at Best Buy. I'll put it that way. But, yeah, we could cite a billion examples. So, it kind of brings the point up to me that if we want to see this explosion just go dark, where we stop developing data centers and expanding the industry, there's one surefire way to achieve that, and that's to stop using the services they provide. Because no demand, no supply. That's the simple reality. And that means, honestly, I'm just going to go through a list here for you. I'm sure I'll leave some things out. Stop eating, using banks, healthcare, stop education, road construction, agriculture. Stop all shopping. Stop watching TV and listening to music. Stop driving. Don't ever fly again. Stop using Zoom and web conferencing tools. Shut down your property surveillance and security systems. Rip all the computers out of law enforcement and every public sector organization. Shut down the military. Every single one of these activities relies on data centers. And I'm sure I'll have some things out. Is there a human activity remaining that doesn't? Is there any that doesn't involve information? Because if it does, it's flowing through a data center.
I'm in here laughing because for some reason that reminded me of a complaint on AI that I hadn't heard before until last night. The complaint was that AI is not going to be adopted as widely as expected until it gets faster.
Really? Which means more data centers.
It was an odd conversation, but it was enlightening because it was an older gentleman, and he was talking about if AI is supposed to be the end-all, be-all, cutting edge of everything, and I ask the AI a question, and it takes 30 seconds to give me an answer, that doesn't feel like cutting-edge technology.
Okay. I could see where you would think that. And I literally remember in the old days when we do proposals to customers for systems and in their specifications, they would specify response times, down to fractions of seconds, literally. And if it didn't meet that, they didn't pay you. I mean, that would be like a deliverables test in your contract. I don't even know if that's the case anymore because it's all in the cloud and it's all based on a gazillion factors. So it's not like your terminal connected with a wire to the computer down the hall. That's not the problem, right? It's your software. That was the point. You're developing software or you're not sizing the system properly. Well, that's not an issue as much today. There are other factors that affect performance. Typically, it's connectivity. And by the way, while we're talking about this subject, we have this build-out in the state of Mississippi of high-speed connectivity across our state. Well, guess what all that's connecting to? And it's your tax money paying for all that. And I don't know about you, but I hear people all the time say, well, when are we coming in my area, right? Well, that means you want to get to the data centers. I know I'm beating that point to death, but it is true. We have become not only accustomed to this, we found that it's pretty valuable to have access to information and the ability to conduct business and carry our lives out using all this technology, this novel technology that's all powered. But there are a lot of people that think, as you said, well, they're just surveillance centers. Now, you've noted those are the same people who post their entire private life on social media. You're worried about your privacy, yet you're like doing videos in your house, as an example. Oh, my gosh. We all have a digital footprint. You don't want your digital footprint? Then disconnect. Nobody's putting a gun to your head. But you know what? You're probably saying, no, I can't do that. Can't live without that. Jeez.
And that's where the notion of AI is taking too long came from. Is like, well, I can just hit Facebook and Facebook's there.
It's true.
Scroll and it's all the stuff I want to look at.
That's true. But you know as well as I do, it's a
completely different system.
That's right. But the other thing is, most people's view of AI is using a tool to ask it a question, feed it a prompt, a query, and it sends information. That's like the infant use of AI. We're just now getting to using agentic AI, for example. And I've talked to companies right here in Mississippi that are using agentic AI to do a lot of that work for them, which is, of course, trimming their costs of operations, and that's flowing to the bottom line. And we should apply that same standard to our government. I've said that before. We shouldn't hire anybody into government. Everybody talks about shrinking government. I'm with you. And shrinking government starts with shrinking the workforce in government at all levels. If AI can do that job, why should we hire that person? Right? And if a job is vacated in government before we just request a replacement, we should have to prove that AI can't do that job before we hire them. That's how you cut costs in government. That's how you truly shrink the size of government, through automation and technology. If you ripped all those computers out in government now that's using data centers, our spending would go up dramatically, and the government would fail, of course. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. Stay with us.
If you're ever
MidDays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's MidDays from the Element Wealth studio. Mark from Gulfport. We'll move on from this subject. I apologize. Kind of dwelled on it a bit, but thought you might have some interest in sort of the history of all this and how we got to where we are today and our insatiable our insatiable desire for more content, more information. It's amazing, and it's all made possible by major advances in technology, network, compute, and storage technology, and, of course, the places where all that is located. The other thing to keep in mind is that every device connected has got what you know this, an IP address, an Internet Protocol address. That's kind of like a mailing address, if you will. Think of it the same way. So data knows where to go, finding your address as it traverses all the wires and all the switches and routers and stuff. Well, those are actually allocated. The addresses are. There's a system for that, and it's based on the amount of connectivity that you have. So the more pipe you have, if you will, the more IP addresses you get, and there are classes of them. And so data centers, because they have a huge concentration of connectivity, because they're serving lots of simultaneous users, they get more addresses, which is why people put their stuff there. You know what I'm saying? Am I explaining that in a way? Okay, I just want to make sure. So that's actually a big deal. If you don't care to be able to access it from anywhere, and you're just going to bypass that and connect directly, that's different. Then those are between you and whomever the hoster is, right? Let's say you're a worker at home and you're connecting directly to your corporate office through a private line that you pay for through the telecom carrier, as opposed to the public internet, which is going to go through the telecom carriers, and that private company is going to have their IT workloads in a data center that has all those IP addresses. So there's some of that at play as well. I'm trying to answer the question why we need it. That's why. So the cool thing when the idea of software as a service, cloud-based services came onto the scene in the early 2000s, our selling point for that was, well, you don't have to invest in all this back door infrastructure, the core infrastructure, if you will. I call it back door because it's usually somewhere in the building where you don't know where it is, and it's kind of out of sight, out of mind in the premise data centers, computer room, if you will. But you don't have to buy all that complicated, expensive equipment. You don't have to support it and maintain it and upgrade it and secure it and refresh it. And the other big thing is when you host those applications and those workloads in a data center, it's available from anywhere. You don't have to worry about how you get to it. You're abstracted from all that. Mark from Gulfport says, I knew the guy in the Air Force who established one of the very first local area networks on an Air Force base. That's really cool. A LAN, as we used to call them. Really neat. Appreciate you telling us that. Jason in Starkville says, we were supposed to be dead, according to Al Gore, by now. That's true. Yeah, Kevin from Brandon reiterates, Gore invented it all. Ben from Madison says, according to UFO lore, Bell Labs was one of the companies associated with the back engineering alien tech. I didn't know that. That's cool. Also, Ben points out, I just shared this with Rhino on the break, Representative Jansen Owen from the Poplarville area, serves in the State House, strong proponent of education freedom, has and also restoring the ballot initiative, says he is going to run for district attorney in his area. So we wish Representative Owen all the best, and we appreciate his service in the Mississippi State Legislature. Somewhere in the mid-'90s, the House playroom turned into the computer room. That's so true. Before the Internet, we thought stupidity was caused by lack of knowledge. That's on the C-Spire text line. I remember that, I think I told you this before, the think tank we had when I was working for Arthur Anderson, as I've told you before, they started shredding documents. I worked in the consulting division. We had a think tank. I can't remember the name of that organization, but their job literally was to try to envision the future as input to policy and management of the firm and its solutions offerings. And they made a statement when right out of college, 1980, they envisioned that eventually every fact known to man would be available in your home. They never said the palm of your hand. They didn't envision that. They said your home. And we said, no way. What are they talking about? Pretty much that's where we are, right? They knew what they were talking about. Well, that's a good thing. The other thing is there's no excuse for being stupid today, right? Because every fact known to man is easily accessible. It's true. Incredible.
That's why I use the phrase willfully ignorant so often.
I agree. Hey, Gerard, Marshall in Lauderdale. I guess my dividend check from my taxpayer investment data centers got lost in the mail. I'd like to go ahead and liquidate my position. To whom do you think I could call about that? What's the difference between China's government having a hand in business and the U.S. doing it? So, first thing I want to clarify is not in data centers directly, in companies developing quantum computing that, of course, is related to data centers because data centers house quantum computers. So I just wanted to make that connection. And I would just say to you, Marshall, that's something you'd have to take up with the president because that was his decision. He felt strongly enough to make those investments to drive development of quantum computing, something I've said many times. I think you probably agree with this. He who owns the high ground of quantum computing is the dominant power in the world. And if we fall behind China in this respect, goodbye. You talk about your power grid failing, your banking system, our healthcare system, our government, our election systems, everything fails if they're able to penetrate all of our cyber defenses because they have exceeded our ability in quantum computing. They will apply it for nefarious use. We're trying to use it to cure cancer, come up with new farming techniques, for example, so that we can eat, right? Only 1%, by the way, of the world's water is usable by humans. 1%. That's not anything new. That's always been the case. Now, that's a lot when you think about 1%, because the world's mostly water, but it's something to consider in that discussion. But the president understands the Chinese threat in this arena. And I'm certainly not defending it, Marshall. I have some concerns as well when the government makes investments in private company, as we did with Intel not so long ago. But this is something we'd have to question the president on, honestly. When the data center doomers drone on, just remember, stupid is as stupid does. Always enjoy the show. T from Lena. Let's see here. I just turned in 10 minutes ago. This was about an hour ago. William and Brandon. So I don't know. I saw this as well. And I don't know if you've seen this, Rhino. It's kind of a graphic that reflects all of this doom and gloom about data centers. Where did they get lung inflammation from? I mean, I know what they're trying to say is that there's diesel generator exhaust, but modern diesel generators don't emit harmful particles. Old ones, yeah. Just like diesel trucks. It's the same concept. It's a diesel engine that happens to be in an enclosure instead of under a hood in a truck. It's the same thing. But modern diesel generators don't do that. And by the way, they only fire up periodically to test. And in the rare outside chance that line power, the electric company, completely goes dark and can't service data centers, that's when the generators kick in until the line power is restored. So a ton of fear-mongering. And then the noise. I don't know where they got that from.
It's not even accurate.
What?
So at the very bottom of their noise complaint in the meme, it says, chronic exposure above 55 decibels harms developing brains.
That's not true.
55 decibels is the sound level of two people speaking calmly in a quiet room.
55 decibels is nothing.
Exactly. So prolonged exposure to that is not harming developing brains. If it is, then them sitting in a classroom listening to a teacher drone on is harming developing brains.
What about playing video games with earpieces in, listening to music, watching television? All are louder than that. I would encourage everybody. There's 6 buildings already in production up the street here in Canton, Amazon. I think it's 7 now, as a matter of fact. It's 1,750,000 square feet of data center. They're operating 7/24, right out there. See if you hear anything. We had somebody on the text line. Remember that, Rhino, a couple of weeks ago said, I'm here right now. I don't hear anything. A little bit of tractor noise. And by the way, if the noise traveled as far as that says, that means when you're in the Walmart in Canton, you'd hear it because it's closer than what that says. Have you heard anybody complain about that, shopping in the Walmart in Canton? You know we would if that were the case. As soon as they get out of their car, my gosh, what's that noise? Because there is none. Man, oh man. We got to tell the truth. Just tell the truth. Let's address the issues with the truth, but we got to frame it with the truth, and then let's address those concerns and make sure we don't do something stupid. Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
From thecebro.com. Come on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. Liz Warren says artificial intelligence will cause a permanent underclass. That's what she said. What is
that? A Freudian slip. I think she's talking about Democrat policies.
By the way, the Democrats lost their bid for a court order to block the president's order that prohibits mail-in voting for anyone not on a pre-approved list of citizens compiled by the Department of Homeland Security. I thought that was sort of common sense. It's kind of sad we have to do that. That's because blue states have very lax voter registration policies, to say the least. But a federal judge yesterday said that legal challenge is premature because the restrictions haven't been put in place yet. They just are bound and determined to do everything they can to ensure that people can vote that shouldn't be voting. Really feels like that. They're not interested in protecting the integrity of the elections in this country. Quite the opposite. And that's sad. But that shows you where they stand in terms of their concern for our country, its systems, the integrity of our elections process. They're not concerned about it one iota. So Dave asked a question about being on the internet service, it looks like, from his electric co-op. That's interesting, Dave. You said you have to reboot your modem about every other day to keep the speed up. I would have them check the equipment, honestly, or something specific to that last mile connection or the equipment that drives that in their network to your house. Yes, they do have the ability. Modern technology allows the provider to control the speed. It's actually what's called a software-defined network that it can actually control the speed of the hardware, in this case, in the infrastructure involved in the connection. Highly unlikely, though, honestly, Dave, that's what's going on. So I would I'd maybe give them a call and see if there's not a problem with your premise equipment and let them, because they can actually look at the speed before it comes into your house and after and see if there's something in between causing that. Gerard, blue states who let illegals get driver's licenses register them to vote through the DMV, the old Motor Voter Act at work, says Mose. Yep, exactly right. And so the concept there seems rather innocuous. You're doing business with the government. Hey, by the way, why don't you let us go ahead out of convenience and register you to vote? The problem is there's little to no vetting of the eligibility of the person. And, of course, they allow illegals to get driver's licenses, which is a common way we interact with our government as much as anything, I'd say. So I agree, and I hear you. Mose, that's certainly a problem. And the blue states, like we said, just seem hell-bent on letting everybody register and then vote. I don't think that's as pervasive, honestly, in the red states. And I think with our law, now that our voting registration, our elections commissioners are going to have to check the rolls on an annual basis, I think you'll find there's few to none that are not eligible from the perspective of being a legal citizen. Talking about in Mississippi. But, yeah, if you were to do that in California or some of the deep New York, Illinois, New Jersey, Connecticut, probably get a different story. I would agree. Pennsylvania even. Interesting. It's a problem. Tim from Tupelo says, heck, now you have to use your smartphone to cook food on your grill. That's true. And by the way, you can use devices on your grill to check the temperature and so forth, right? And monitor that. That will communicate back.
With the swanky grills, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, swanky grills. Gary in the Berg says, the laptop getting run over is like the commercial for the suitcase that was thrown in the cage with a gorilla and survived. Yeah, that was a great promotion. Samsonite, I think, their ruggedized luggage. Yeah, that's a good point. Absolutely. John in Pontotoc talks about the Amish, who essentially don't use any of that. I agree. But I think they sneak it, right? I don't know.
Yeah, they have certain workarounds for technology that they're not technically allowed to use. Like, I want to say it was a mechanized forklift I saw where it was being controlled with reins attached to the controls, so they were technically not controlling it.
Yeah.
Or something like that. There are sects within the Amish community that believe differently than others, but yeah, most of the Amish community is about just disconnecting.
Yeah.
Or not even being connected. They've never connected to begin with, so they can't disconnect.
Unfortunately, CC got mad at me, said I'm talking about it too much, and so it's a huge issue, and it's going to be discussed throughout the country, throughout the election cycles, at the federal, state, local level. You may have seen the protests in Jackson yesterday. I don't know if you saw the people involved in protesting, but looked like they're likely paid protesters. One of them had a mask on, of course, their COVID mask. I noticed that. Had all the goofy little signs and all that sort of stuff. Something, though, that we certainly should be concerned about is our debt and our debt interest. Not really looking good. Now our debt consuming 19% of our total budget. The cost of that debt continues to rise, and that's a problem. And, of course, that's because we keep racking up debt. So the interest is now the second largest spending item in our budget. Annual interest is next to Social Security. More on debt than on Medicaid, national defense, or all non-defense discretionary programs combined. Interesting. We're going to see also, as we approach the elections next year, we've talked about this before, a movement in this country to reform property taxes. And their Speaker of the House, as you know, has created a committee to study that very subject. And I think those committees convene next week. Some of them have already started. So I believe that's the case. And I can't remember all the committees. One is on school district consolidation. One is on government efficiency. One's on property taxes. But the property tax subject is a touchy one for sure. And there's some people talking about wanting to do something about that. A popular proposal is exempt everybody over 65 altogether from paying property taxes, exempt people who own their home outright from paying property taxes, or at least increase the homestead exemption to reduce the property tax bill. I would just suggest to those involved in these discussions to produce pro forma budgets, forecasts, projections for every school district, city, and county in the state based on reflecting the proposals, because that's where that money goes. It doesn't go to the state government. About 55% of your property taxes in Mississippi go to school districts. So I would be curious to see where the anti-school choice people land on that, Rhino, who always complain that if we had school choice, they'd be taking away a lot of the state money from public schools, and it would follow the student to their education setting of choice, and that means less money going to the public schools. Well, that's exactly what this would do. So it just needs to be considered. I'm all for it, by the way. I'd love to see some sort of reform in our property tax structure in the state of Mississippi to push those bills down, because I think people really don't like paying property taxes. They certainly don't like paying the ad valorem taxes on their vehicle. That is a form of property tax, the property in this case being the vehicle. Same use of that money. It stays local, school districts, counties, cities. If you reside in a city, if your vehicle is registered in a city. But any serious discussion about that's got to include projections for cities, counties, school districts that reflect those proposals. Because if you're going to cut the taxes, that means less revenue, less money in school districts for education. Needs to be considered. And I hope they do. You know, and I'd love to see some reforms. And by the way, there's a groundswell across the country to do this. It's not unique to the state of Mississippi. The state of Florida is talking about it as well, is Governor DeSantis. But you got to read deeply into those proposals, not exactly as presented. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
I move mountains for a living. They're rolling. Middays with Gerard Gibert. What?
This is so
awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. The Huckabee plan for taxes on consumption is the best way to go. Talking about property taxes in the last segment. I'd love to see that. I've actually done the math on that. Did a little research, went and collected some data. The Department of Revenue of Mississippi was kind enough to provide detailed information that I requested concerning the ad valorem taxes. I just focused on car tax first because that's one that really gets people fired up. And they provided me the amount of revenue received from the ad valorem tax component of your car tag cost by county. And they also provided the total amount of sales, retail sales, subject to the full 7% state sales tax rate in each county. And so if you look at, okay, well, let's get rid of car tags or reduce the cost of car tags and replace those that revenue with sales taxes. Those data points that I just described are necessary to perform that calculation. It works in some counties and it doesn't. In Madison County, DeSoto County, for example, where Harrison County retail sales are robust, and when you compare that to the amount collected on car tags and look at, say, implementing a sales tax that would stay within the county to replace the ad valorem taxes collected by the county, which get distributed to the school district, the county, and the city. In those counties, 1.3 to 1.5% sales tax would do it. So instead of paying 7% sales tax, you'd pay 8.5, 8.2, 3, something like that. But if you look at some of the counties, Sharkey is an example, a 40% sales tax would be required because there's no retail sales. It's a little bit more difficult to achieve than meets the eye than you would think, and that's just based on the math of what would be required there. And that doesn't get into real estate property taxes. But in the state of Mississippi, in general, we pay 7% sales taxes. There are a couple of locations, Tupelo, Jackson specifically, that have local options, add-ons. But adjacent to us in Arkansas, in Tennessee, in Louisiana, and Alabama, they all have considerably higher sales taxes because they have local county component layered on. Somebody told me yesterday that they were in Mobile. I didn't know this, Rhino. I hadn't looked it up, but I guess is that Mobile County and the city of Mobile? The sales tax rate, when you lap them all together, is 11%. And that was a person that lives in southeast Mississippi that travels and shops in Mobile from time to time. You're looking at that? What do you see?
Combined sales tax rate for Mobile County, Alabama is 10%.
10%, not 11%.
4% state tax, 1% Mobile County tax, 5% city and district tax.
Okay, but it's 10 versus our 7. Almost 40%, 45% more. Now, I haven't looked at their property taxes. I know that historically, whenever I've researched property taxes in Alabama, that millage is typically a little less than it is in Mississippi, but not a bunch. So, anyhow, that's something that is just to be noted. And even though you've seen reports that say, I think our state auditor has done this, that, hey, our tax burden is higher than the local, I should say the adjacent states, that's true from a percentage of our income perspective. But that's because our income's lower than the other states. As a percentage in terms of sales tax, property taxes, income taxes, we're lower, except for Alabama, which has a slightly lower property tax. Tennessee, of course, which does not have an income tax, but it does have a higher property tax than we do. It doesn't have an income tax, and it has higher sales taxes. I know in Memphis, for example, Rhino, I think it's 10.5%. The government's going to get their money one way or another. So my friend Representative Joe Tubb, Bubba, as we call him in the band, he said Hattiesburg tax, when you add it up, is 10%. Is that true? They have a local option as well? I thought it was just Tupelo and Jackson. That would be why, though, Representative Tubb, I believe, is because Hattiesburg has a local option that they've layered on. That, of course, requires approval by the state government. What do you see there, Rhino? Is that right? 10%? That's what Representative Tubb says, and he's from that area. So we'll have to research that.
Show where it can get up to 10% at restaurants and bars and hotels and motels.
Yeah, now that's a little different. That's right. You do have the hotel, motel, restaurant tax. That's fairly common across the state, but not across the board like it is in Mobile, Memphis, other states. Out of here today, back tomorrow. Stay safe and God bless.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.